I'm Brandon Amoroso, and this is the D2Z podcast, building and growing your business from a Gen Z perspective. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to D2Z, a podcast about using the Gen Z mindset to grow your business. I'm Gen Z entrepreneur Brandon Amoroso, founder and CEO of e-com agency Electric Marketing. Today, I'm talking with Shanif Dhanani, the CEO of Apteo, a platform that helps e-commerce brands create hyper-personalized marketing from their customer data. Shanif, thanks for coming on the show.
Brandon, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. Good to chat.
So before we jump into everything, could you just give everybody like a brief intro on who you are and how you got to this point with founding Apteo?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a data geek. My background is in software and AI. Relevant to this, before this, I helped start a company called Tap Commerce, which was one of the first mobile advertising platforms for e-commerce. We sold to Twitter, so I worked at Twitter for a while as a data scientist on their ads team. And then towards the end of my career there, I started thinking about what's next and started building out Apteo, which basically helps brands use AI to create better marketing campaigns based on their data and what we think their customers are going to do next. So pretty much high level overview for me, data guy, love advertising, love e-commerce, and sort of like to use data to help brands.
Awesome. And can you just touch on who are your typical clients? Are they Shopify merchants, or is it anybody who has an e-commerce storefront?
Yeah, we do primarily work with most of our customers are Shopify merchants. I would say about 85 to 90%. But we're not just limited to them. We work with folks who use like BigCommerce and WooCommerce, lots of different platforms. But most of the brands that we work with are sort of D2C retailers. They're doing sales in industries that can sell to the same customer more than once. So like fashion, food, apparel, skincare. We even have some medical device companies. But it is pretty much anyone who's selling online, who wants to grow their customer lifetime value, and who is already sort of interested in data-driven marketing, but just doesn't really know where to start.
What are some of the pain points that you see brands dealing with around data today? Because for one, it's like the aggregation of data, but then second is like actually taking that data and using it in a meaningful way.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think a lot of it, Brandon, you've probably seen this in your own agency. A lot of it started when people were sort of seeing worse results from paid social media ads. And, they had sort of outsourced all of their data and data marketing to other companies like Facebook. And today they're trying to get all of that settled. And so a lot of folks, one of the biggest mistakes we've seen is that people aren't even collecting data. For example, maybe they have information, but it's all in different places, or maybe they're forgetting to collect phone number in addition to email, on their pop-ups. So one of the biggest things we see brands doing is just forgetting to collect that information. But then, even brands that have that, they don't always do a great job of using that information. So sometimes they might just have a huge CRM with customer data, but they're doing the same sort of weekly email campaign, sending out the same offer to the same people every week, and not really using their data to figure out what to do next. So between those two, not collecting data and not using it, as simple as it sounds, those are the biggest mistakes. And so if you are a brand who's starting to use your data even a little bit, you're probably well ahead of the curve at this point.
And so where does your platform sort of help extend brands' ability to use data in a meaningful way?
For sure. We come into play sort of at a couple of different levels. So the first thing we do is we let you just hook up your systems, like your Shopify account or your Klaviyo account, whatever you're using, to Apteo, and then we'll centralize all of your data in one place. We'll give you a sort of a consistent view of your customers, all of your metrics, all of the behavior, personalized product journeys. So like everything comes into one place. But then really where we're focusing on is taking all of that data to come up with customer segmentation, identifying customer behavior, identifying customer product affinity to see what individual people are likely to do next. And then we'll come up with all of this information. We'll predict what people are likely to do, and we'll sync those back to your existing platforms like Facebook or like Klaviyo. So we come in at the level where obviously we're collecting your data, so we kind of act like a customer data platform, but really what we're focusing on is helping you use that to understand what your customers are going to do, so that you can basically market to them more precisely.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of applications for that, especially because like you can, if you're not using a tool like an Apteo, you can have, like you could try to do everything manually, like in Klaviyo, for example, and you can make assumptions like, oh, well, if you bought this, you might be likely to buy this, but you don't actually know. And so the ability to have these audiences sort of created automatically and then just push is definitely really valuable for merchants.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons people like us, is because they don't have to spend time in Excel or guessing on Klaviyo anymore. So we are able to save them some time there.
How much of what you do is sort of product education?
Yeah.
Because something I've seen more and more, especially with apps that like Klaviyo, for example, it's email and SMS marketing. Like, okay, that makes sense. It doesn't require anything crazy to understand that. But as you get into some of these more advanced tools in terms of just concepts, I've found that one of the biggest struggles for us is getting merchants to understand how to utilize it and adopt it in the best way possible. What are some things that you've done to help accelerate like merchant adoption of your product once they actually onboard?
It's definitely it's definitely a problem. But I think the things that have worked for us, so we lead with the benefits. So instead of saying, hey, we can help you use your data to do this, that, and other, what we say is, look, if you use Apteo, most customers are seeing like 30% ROI, or they're seeing their ROAS go from 1x to 3x. And then they get really interested. They're like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, I haven't been able to do that before. How do you guys do that? So we lead kind of with, okay, this is what you guys are going to get. When they're interested enough to reach out, or maybe they give us their email address, we'll put them into a drip campaign where we do things like educate them, like you said. But once we're able to jump on a call with them, we say, hey, look, this is basically what we do. We use your customer data to figure out what your customers are going to do next. And then we target them with relevant messaging. And then they kind of get it. They say, oh, okay, I guess you guys are kind of using AI somewhere to figure out what customers are likely to do. How does this play back into my marketing stack? Or how do I actually, work with you guys? And then we say, look, it's pretty straightforward. You plug in your tool. Our software does a lot of the work. We'll sync a lot of the information back to your tools, and we'll help you create better email campaigns or SMS or paid social. And so what we do is we do a lot of breaking things down into a way that fits their existing workflow. And this can happen in a few ways. Like, we've got a newsletter where we talk about results. We've got daily social media posts where we talk about how it works. We've got a getting started guide, which breaks things down. And so you're right. It's like, it does take a lot of helping people to understand what it is we're actually doing. But I think that when you break it down and you give it to them in pieces, it's a lot easier, and they tend to get it, especially when you're starting with the benefits that they can get.
Yeah, definitely. And just because you got them to download the app doesn't mean that your sales process has stopped. If anything, it's just begun because of all that needs to go into it.
That's so true. We used to focus a lot more on just marketing the app itself, hoping people would sign up. But now what we do is we actually spend a lot more time on the onboarding process, on the sales side, on the customer success side, like getting people to actually use it and then see the benefits they get. And that's helped a lot. Getting people to actually see the value by walking them through it, I think, has changed our business quite a bit.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, the e-commerce community is relatively finite and tight knit.
Yeah.
If you have very positive experiences with 5 merchants, those 5 merchants can turn into more because they know the other e-com manager at another place, and it can just sort of have that spiral effect, which we see on the agency side as well. I mean, almost, I'd say 99% of our business is just referrals from clients or tech partners,
Awesome.
which is nice. But I mean, you can't do that to start. You have to get to that point. So the marketing is the most important in the beginning, but then it sort of transitions into retention and customer success more than anything.
Which is becoming a big topic these days for the brands themselves as well, as I'm sure you've seen.
I was actually talking to a Recharge a couple of days ago, and because what we primarily focus on is improving like retention and increasing lifetime value. And he was like, you're one of the first agencies that is offering retention as a service, like a full suite. Basically, you have your apps and the tech stack, you have the services component, and then you have the ability to sort of see it through and highlight the incremental ROI that comes from working with you and the tech partners. But that retention as a service sort of moniker that he used. I'm like, I'm gonna have to steal this because I like that one.
That's awesome. I've never heard that. That's awesome. I love it. That's great.
I don't know if it sounds as cool as SaaS, like RaaS. I don't know if I like that, but
if enough people start saying it, it becomes normal. So that's, it's a good way to say it. I like retention as a service, though. I think it's a moniker that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So you obviously work with a lot of brands. What do you see working well for them versus not working well?
I think, and this won't surprise anyone, as of last year, Facebook's ads started sort of not performing as well as they were. And so that really caused a big uproar. Some brands are still doing well. Don't get me wrong. A lot of folks might still be doing pretty good on Facebook. The things that are working well, though, are brands who are doing a combination of email and SMS marketing, and obviously segmenting those email and SMS campaigns. So the most sort of the healthiest brands we've seen have like 30 to 40% coming of the revenue coming from email, and maybe 20 to 25 from SMS, or some combination of those two. And what they're doing is they're being very consistent with their messaging. So on the email side, they're not just doing sales and offers and promotions. They're also talking about their values. They're talking about how customers can get value from their products. They're talking about education. And then they'll sprinkle in sort of an offer or a promotion, maybe once every couple of weeks or once a week. But they do it intelligently. They won't offer, like, I don't know, a dress to a guy who's only bought tennis shoes before. They'll start to figure out what's the best product for each person, and then they'll offer it to them. And then they'll combine those emails with like one or maybe two SMS messages a week. But they're really good. They're short, they're to the point, they talk exactly about what needs to be done. They give a picture, and then they give a link. And so the brands that have sort of figured out email and SMS are doing really, really well. They're able to sort of get predictable revenue from their email and SMS campaigns. And then they might be supplementing those campaigns with Facebook ads based on what they're trying to achieve, whether that's to increase the cross sells for a particular product. They can do that, or maybe try to acquire new customers. One of the ways we help is by acquiring new customers using lookalike audiences from key segments that our software finds. So brands that have sort of figured it out have got a pretty good, healthy mix of different channels. A lot of that comes from email and SMS, and they're using their data to basically segment their campaigns properly when it comes down to it.
And I think that is the biggest miss I see, is the lack of segmentation, especially like you have so much data on a customer in Shopify. And like if you go into a Klaviyo account, you've got 18 other apps that all plug their data into the customer profile in Klaviyo. I mean, there's like literally 1,000 ways that you could segment and personalize. And I think it might even be a little bit too overwhelming, because so often I just see campaigns going out based off of engagement data with emails or texts. So like, oh, we send every campaign to people who've opened in the last 180 days or clicked rather, because with Apple Mail now you have to separate those out as well. But that is so rudimentary and not really addressing the main point, which is personalization and making the content relevant for whomever is receiving it. And I don't think it has to be crazy either. Like I think what stifles a lot of brands is they get so fixated on creating these beautiful image-based designs that take hours in Photoshop or Figma, which, don't get me wrong, I mean, they're great, but just try a simple text-based email that takes you a couple minutes to write the copy, switch out some of the verbiage based off of the segmentation you're using from that first or zero party data. And almost every single time we do that, it outperforms the image-based ones. It's just, it doesn't look as cool. And from a marketer, you're like, oh, well, this one is like, it's really nice, but keep it simple. And then you can iterate from there. I think you just need to have like stepping stones versus trying to do everything at once. Which is why we
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say which is why we like to sort of think about how do we want to personalize the email and SMS, and then we go out and figure out how are we going to get the data if it's like zero party data. Whereas sometimes I feel like a brand will just go and get the zero party app, like a quiz or a post purchase survey, and they just start asking a bunch of shit, but they don't actually know what they're going to do with it. And so then you just took a quiz that's 15 questions and you expect to get personalized marketing now, but you're just getting the same cookie cutter stuff that everybody else is.
You're speaking my language, man. I should put you on retainer. No, that's great. That's exactly what we tell our customers. It's like, you can't send the same message to all 100,000 people on your list. You got to start to figure out which people are going to respond to what. And I was going to say, I can't tell you how many times a marketer has said, hey, we got to design this email to be way better. Like, we can't send out this message with this email template. And I'm just kind of thinking, well, the design is okay, but what's more important is the messaging and the recipients and how you pair those two together, and then the content and the offer that you give them. So yeah, I absolutely agree. If there's one thing I wish people would do more, is basically segment your customers and send them a relevant offer.
Sounds simple, a little bit harder to
execute. Yeah, hard to do. That's why our app has customers, just because we make it easy, but it is hard to do, that's for sure.
Yeah. So where do you think Apteo goes from here? Like, what are some logical next steps and fast follows for you as you want Apteo here?
Yeah, so, just as a reminder, we've got this thing that basically finds people who are likely to respond to certain products or offers. The next step, and then we segment them based on similarities, and we push them back to your tools. The next thing that we're trying to do, and we're sort of data first, AI first company, is provide recommendations on which campaigns you should run with which channels first. So let's say, for example, you've got one of our segments, maybe people who are likely to buy a specific product. It's one of our cross-sell recommendations. Well, right now you get that, but you might not know, should I run a promotion to these folks? Should I do it on Facebook? Should I do it on email? So we're using our data plus some of our AI skills to build a recommendation engine to show you what campaigns to run on what channels. You'll get like a long list of how much we think you're going to make with each campaign. Kind of like if you've got Google Analytics or Google Ads, they tell you recommended sort of tweaks that you could make. So that's kind of what we're working on now. And then the next thing is basically enabling you to create those campaigns and send them out really easily. So on our platform, let's say we have recommendation number one is, hey, send this group of people a Facebook ad. You can click a button, we'll automatically create the ad for you using AI, pulling in images from your store, coming up with recommended sort of headlines and text. And then you can click a button and save it to Facebook or send it out immediately. So really what we're trying to do is make it much easier for you to to know what to do next, so that you can focus on maybe tweaking the creatives or making sort of optimizations that you as a human are really good at.
Got it. So enough about the app side of things. I just want to touch on your thoughts around how you've built, sort of grown your internal team thus far. And what are some key things that you look for, and how do you think about like culture as you're building out your internal team, especially when you're like, you don't have 500 employees. These are some of your first like very crucial team members. So what are some key things that you've been doing to get them, and just can you walk that a little bit?
Yeah, man, I tell you, this is so important. Building a team is it's the hardest part, but it's also the most important part of building a business. So for me, I started with a couple of guys that I could trust, co-founders who were kind of interested in the world of AI, interested in the world of bringing this information and technology to people. So we've, kind of started with that. It's always important to work with people that you've worked with before, or that you can trust, or that have different skill sets than you do. And that's kind of the second piece, which I wanted to touch on, is like, I'm a techie, I'm a data and AI guy. I've done a lot of other things in my career, but I'm not, someone who's super skilled at sales or marketing. And so I knew right away, like after I did a bit of sales for like the first few months, I knew I wanted to bring on someone who was going to be able to take on a lot of that for me. So I supplemented it with, sales guys. But we did we kind of did trial engagements first. I worked with them for a couple of months, saw how it went, talked about expectations, talked about what it would take for us to work more closely together. And then as the trials went forward, we decided, okay, let's work more closely together. And so those are some of the things I think about. Another big thing, you mentioned culture, which I think is really underrated. One of the things, I've got sort of this policy of, never work with a jerk, or never work with, someone who's kind of hard to work with, no matter how good they are. I think that's served us well. So we always look for people who have a good attitude. Attitude is actually one of the things that's really important to me. It's like, how do I know this person is going to persevere? How do I know this person is going to be nice, friendly to work with? They're going to get stuff done. comes down to attitude and like, how do you work with them? How do they talk to others? So actually, we generally start with that sort of attitude first, and then we talk about skills, and then we talk about the functional role. When it comes to interviewing, we generally like to have a couple of different folks from our team talk to a candidate, just because we are a small team, so we know that multiple people are going to have to work with others. And we generally like to find people, given that we are a startup, we generally like to find people who are interested in sort of taking on bigger opportunities, but maybe a little bit more risky opportunities. And so I'll generally be very upfront and transparent. I'll say, hey, we're a startup, we got this much cash on hand, we got this runway, this is what we're trying to do. And people are like, oh, okay, maybe that's not the best for me. And then easily filter those out. And then for people who are really interested, we continue the conversation. So we've got sort of this process. I kind of touched on like 5 or 6 different points of the process, maybe not in the order that we think about them, but those are all things that I think about when I'm sort of building out a team for what we need to get done.
I think that transparency is really important, because you wouldn't want to bring somebody into something that they're coming in under false pretenses. And then there's so much time and effort that goes into hiring and onboarding somebody. Like, if you could just, there's no reason to try and make something fit if it's not going to. And so I think that makes a lot of sense, that you just this is what it is. Like, this is how much cash we have in the bank. This is our runway. This is what we're trying to do. Like, are you game to come on and really help us build something? Or do you maybe want something with a little bit more structure, and then we're not going to be the best fit for you?
So important for startups, especially. I think more companies should do it, like especially bigger companies should be a lot more transparent, but it's super important for startups, because the worst thing you could do is bring someone on and then have them leave in 4 months, because then it's just a waste of everyone's time and money.
Right. Yeah. I couldn't agree more.
You've probably seen that in your own sort of agency, I'm guessing, as well. So it's all, important stuff.
Yes. I think like our onboarding process has evolved so much, because it was very much so there was no process. And then when it got to like, I'd say 12 or 15 people, there was a process, but it was more so manual. And then now it is, how do we make this? I mean, this isn't how we do it, but how can we get it as close to, like, you could theoretically never talk to anyone, because we have it so built out in terms of these are all the steps and the checklists and the documentation and the processes that you need to familiarize yourself with in order to get up to speed with what we do at Electric. Now, obviously, like, we're still meeting with them and there's still some personal interaction, but theoretically, like, we can completely detach and remove ourselves. And that has set up our team members so much better for success than in the past. And you also have to realize that not everybody works or learns the same way. And so some people need more of that structure and aren't comfortable with just like hopping in and running around with their head cut off, figuring things out, which is very much so what it was in the in the early days.
So interesting. Like, everyone has their own way of learning and their own way of interacting with others. And you as a manager have to, adjust yourself to deal with everyone differently. Very interesting process.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on. This was really insightful. But before we hop off here, I just want to let you sort of fill people in on where they can find you online and sort of special offers you have for them. The floor is yours.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Brandon. For your listeners, I'd love to offer an extended free trial and basically us getting you set up. So you guys can find us at apteo.co. That's apteo.co. Just mention this episode and we'll basically get you set up with that extended trial. We've seen brands, if you've got a lot of good data, but you don't know how to use it, we've seen brands see 30 or 40% ROIs and pretty big increases in ROAS. So we're pretty confident we'll be able to help. But that's available for all your listeners. But again, thanks so much, Brandon. It was a blast being able to talk to you today.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again sometime soon once you see through some of these new product iterations you got coming out.
My pleasure. Absolutely.
But as always, thank you everybody for listening in. This is Brandon Amoroso. You can find me at brandonamoroso.com or at electricmarketing.com, and we'll see you next time.